Hello, everybody. My name is Lina Luaces. I am 23 years old, and I am Miss Universe Cuba 2025. Today, I'm here with three very special guests that I'm really grateful, and I just have a profound sense of this is such a full circle moment that I get to be here with you guys, sharing a couple of testimonies and a couple of stories for my social project, which is a cause that I hold really close to my heart. And I'm going to introduce you guys to Jackie and to Jose.
Hi, Lina, thank you. So yes, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Pablos. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for having us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jose. I'm 20 years old and I'm in recovery.
So Lina, I wanted to just talk a little bit about myself, our program, how we know each other. So I'm the clinical director, as you know, of a mental health and substance use clinic for adolescents, 13 to 17. I've been working with kids for quite some time. It's a passion of mine, and Jose graciously joined us today. He did our program as an adolescent and as an adult, so I'm really excited for him to tell his story. It's been a journey.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey, a good one too.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask so that everyone watching can know why this, for you, why is this your special project?
Well, to me, it was really important. I love that we're having this conversation because I think, especially growing up in the public eye and what people perceive of me on social media is not even half of it. I think that it's a really big part of my life that people might not know. I have seen people who I love very much and very close to me be directly affected by addiction, substance abuse, alcoholism, and I think that it's very stigmatized nowadays, and there's a lot of shame behind it. And I think that I always say that when God gives you a platform, it's for a reason. And for a long time, I didn't really understand why I was gifted the platform that I have, and I've always been really grateful for it. But I always knew that I wanted to speak about it one day. I never really knew when, I never really knew why. But then once the opportunity to compete in Miss Universe and we are required to do a social project, it wasn't even a question in my mind what I wanted to speak about, especially since I have been personally affected by it, and I grew up in the midst of confusion and not understanding what a severe disease addiction really is and the way that it can really strip you of the people that you love. And it's like they're alive, but they're not there. It kind of just transforms them into a different person. And the first step for me is educating people and making them realize that there shouldn't be shame behind it, and there's always hope. I think that that's why I wanted to also have people share their testimony, because it's a really dark hole that a lot of people think that they can't get out of, but I've seen people, myself, get out of that hole, and although sometimes it might not end the way that we want it to, it always can go in the positive direction. And that's the story I want to share. I also want to focus and dial in on the link of mental health with substance abuse, because when I was a teenager, I kind of went through a tough time with my mental health due to seeing people, family members and friends really close to me kind of dealing with those issues. So I think that the link to me, breaking those generational curses and those generational traumas and realizing that children learn from their environment. And we focus a lot on addicts who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, but we don't realize that teenagers and adolescents deal with this as well. And a lot of the time it happens because of what they're experiencing at home. And they don't have the resources. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to realize that you're in trouble. And maybe your parents might not be the ones that are there for you, but there will be people that are there for you. You just have to make sure that you speak up. But finding the courage in yourself to speak up is usually the hardest part. So that's what I want to encourage, and that's the message that I want to give, especially in this journey that I'm in right now. I want to focus on teenagers because my teenage years were very hard times in my life. And I wish that I had more courage to speak up and kind of realize that I wasn't alone, you know?
And I think that's such an important message. And I was so excited when I had the opportunity to partner and have this conversation with you. Because, you know, my organization at Adolescent Wellness Academy, it originally started years ago with Principles Recovery, which was an adult program, right? So I think especially in Florida and South Florida, there's a lot of awareness for adults with addiction and recovery. And, you know, when the company first started, all of these stories were the same. These people were talking about addiction starting very early on in their life, you know, in 13, 12, 10, you know, younger and younger ages of the onset of use. And what I love is that our company decided to do something about that, right? Like if we can intervene at earlier stages of people's lives, we could hopefully make an impact and keep this individual from spiraling further into addiction and waiting until they're 50, 60 years old to get help. So I'm really excited about the mission of our program. And I was really excited to have young people in recovery here because let's be real, I think that oftentimes, and Jose can speak to this too, like when kids hear about substance use and addiction and mental health, it's always like, that's not me. You know, that's not my story. I can't relate to that. Exactly. Or, yeah, I don't need to worry about that right now. You know, so it was important for us to talk to people your viewers' age, right? 15, 16, 17 years old that are in it, that can hopefully connect to these stories and be like, wow, maybe I do need to revisit my relationship with substances or my relationship with my mental health.
100%. And that's also why it's a principle for me right now, because it's also very normalized at that age. You know, there's the culture of, especially growing up in Miami, the party culture, the way that you laughed. He started laughing because, you know, a lot of people don't realize they have a problem because a lot of people can control it, but some people simply cannot. And the first step in the process is realizing that you have a problem and kind of being able to take the steps after that. But that's kind of why I started studying it. I started looking into statistics, which I want to go over with you because the statistics even shock me. And I'm educated on this topic. And even today you walked in and you told me a statistic and I actually froze. I was like, there's no way that it's that much more prominent than we realize. You know, I think that you had mentioned 1 in 4 children live in a household where at least one parent has some form of substance abuse, which is, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs. And that shocked me because imagine being in a room with 16 people and 4 of them are dealing with that.
Absolutely. And it's shown that those kids end up having higher rates of mental health and substance use issues. So it's a big problem. It's a big problem. We need to talk about it. We need to raise awareness. And, you know, hopefully parents hearing this realize, wow, you know, if I can't do it for myself right now, maybe I do need to do it for my kids. Maybe I'm not realizing the impact that I'm having in my household, but also kids watching can say, you know what, actually, I do need to ask for help. This isn't normal, the way that mom, dad, or caregiver is interacting in our home environment, and maybe it's time to ask for help.
Yeah. And, you know, I kind of want to tie in the mental health to this because although I do notice now that I've been studying more and looking into this, I realize that yes, a lot of the time when you see adolescent drug usage, it's because they saw a mother or a father or a grandmother, and sometimes they even encourage it. You know, I've heard stories that somebody's telling their parent that they have anxiety and the dad will offer them an opioid or a shot or a drink to calm down. But that's not the main cause of the mental health issues sometimes. I also want to point out, me personally, like I know that a lot of my mental health issues were due to, because I'm very empathetic. And I will see people who I know suffering with the disease of addiction, and that made me suffer from multiple mental health issues. So can we talk a little bit about the tie of maybe they don't fall into the path of addiction, but they fall into the path of battling those thoughts of seeing someone that they love going through something as tough as addiction?
Yes. You know, a recent study in 2024 came out and they looked at kids 12 to 17, specifically with caregivers with addiction, and they had higher rates of generalized anxiety, major depressive disorder, There was also an increased risk of suicidal thoughts, suicide attempts. And thankfully, we are seeing a decrease between 2021 to 2024. So there was a bit of a decrease in those rates, which is great. I think that a lot of that also had to do with a pandemic.
Yes.
That's like a whole other, I think, door that was opened when it comes to mental health and addiction.
Yeah, with everything,
You
not just
know,
addiction, all issues worldwide that we
Yeah,
saw.
yeah.
A lot of spikes, which was really devastating.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that right now we're starting to see some decrease, and I think that has a lot to do with raising awareness projects like this, and also realizing and recognizing there's an issue and we need to provide services. And I think that schools are starting to get there, with realizing that that kids, that lack of connection that happened during the pandemic resulted in a lot of mental health issues and challenges. I've seen it in my own program when I meet kids and I'm admitting children into the program. I would say 9 out of 10 times when I ask what was that trigger for the depression, the self-esteem, the thoughts of death, a lot of them said it was the isolation, which led them to then experimenting with substances. So imagine having a caregiver at home where you have means and access, you're alone all day, you're not in school, you're not engaged in sports and clubs and things that kind of, those healthy parts of being a teenager, and that anxiety, that depression, that loneliness gets
Yeah.
to you.
I will say, I believe a lot of the decline has to do with our generation as well. I think that specifically, as a Cuban woman, Latino culture definitely has a very sweep it under the rug culture, which isn't their fault. That's very generational, and it goes way back into the lineage. But I think that our generation, specifically with social media, we're the first ones to say, hey, this isn't normal. Like a lot of these emotions that we're feeling, a lot of these problems that we're having that we don't speak about, that we don't generally, talk about. It's kind of just a don't say, don't tell in Latino households. And I think that is also being broken with our generation. With social media, we're destigmatizing a lot of these issues. Even me sitting here today is kind of a big deal because I feel like, a lot of people get uncomfortable talking about it. So that's kind of why I wanted to invite Jose here today as well. He's going to tell us a little bit about his story. He's going to explain to us his path of recovery and kind of how you got into that mindset, because a lot of the times we see addictions in adolescents happen because they saw an example from their parents. But Jose was telling me that you had the perfect family, and it still ended up happening. So tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up here and, the light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Jose. I'm 20 years old. And like she was saying, I had an amazing childhood, right? I was born in Cuba. I came when I was 9 years old. As good as a childhood as someone could have, it wasn't perfect, but it was as good as you could get. And I'm very, very grateful for my parents. And I was blessed enough to be born into a good family, not just my close family, like my aunts, my uncle, everybody was super, super nice, and it is nice, and they all helped me, right? But I want to give a little bit of backstory. Again, I was born in Cuba. I came over here. I guess that was the hardest part that happened in my childhood, was coming here. No English, no nothing. That was, of course. Where? In Havana. Yeah. Yeah, I was born there, and again, it was an amazing childhood. My parents gave me everything that I needed and everything, everything that I wanted, because, of course, as you guys know, situation's not the best in Cuba, but I can't complain. I generally couldn't complain. And like I was saying, the hardest part of my childhood was coming over here, a brand new country, you don't know anybody, because I didn't know any English at all whatsoever. And, of course, I felt alone. And I would like to tell you that was the reason why I started doing what I was doing, but I don't believe that. I personally could not, find a reason why I started getting high or drinking or whatever the case was. I really, really don't know, because like we were saying, I had an amazing childhood, right? My parents don't drink. Like, I know every Cuban drinks. My parents does not drink, right? My dad will have a beer every once in a while. My mom, absolutely nothing. And I don't know where it all started. All I know is that I was attracted to a lifestyle. I really, really was attracted to it. Everything about it, just everything about it. I was very attracted to it, and I liked it. And I decided to try, and I liked it even more once I tried it. And I ran with it. I don't want to get too deep into like the stuff that I did, but I put my family through a lot of stuff, a lot, way more than I put myself through. And of course, I put myself through a lot of stuff too. But the main person that was hurt was my mom, right? Like I said, I was blessed enough to have a good mother, because if she didn't, like if she wasn't on top of me the way that she was, I don't know if I would have done it. So I'm a strong believer that kids need help.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about, like you need a voice, you know, you need to know that it's okay to ask for help, because you can't do it alone, right? I personally couldn't do it alone. I tried more than 10 times. I couldn't do it alone. I kept relapsing. And you know how they say it's progressive? Trust me, it's generally progressive. At least for me, it was. Every time it was worse consequences, worse drugs, worse everything.
Yeah.
Right? Every time, and it was more and more and more and more. And of course, I didn't believe that I was an addict. Everybody knew except me. Everybody, my friends. Yeah,
Right.
denial was crazy. Everybody knew my friends. It was coming to a point that the friends I was getting high with were like, "Yo, I don't want to hang with you. You do too much." And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
And I guess when I realized I had a problem, that was not the only reason, but one of the reasons was like it was like 4 a.m. Every single night we'll go out, but everybody would go home. I was like, "Yo, I don't want to go home. Let's not. What are we going home for? What's good at home? Let's keep doing this. Let's keep getting high." And yeah, it was fun at first. I'm not here to tell you that drugs are bad. That's not what I'm here to tell you, But it was bad for me because I couldn't stop doing them. I couldn't stop. I physically could not stop. And it got to a point where I lost everything. I lost everything, the little thing that I have, because, listen, recovery didn't give me my life back. Recovery gave me a life because I didn't have anything. I started using when I was 14 years old, and I got clean at 17. Then I relapsed, and I got clean again at 18. So, like, I had nothing to my name but the little thing that my parents would be able to give me, like a car. I lost that. She had to take it away because I was going to kill myself. I literally was. And I was never suicidal, but I was so close to dying multiple times. And that's where God comes into place for me, because I come from a religious household, but not too religious. God was mentioned every once in a while, but it wasn't like, oh, you got to go to church every day. So God was there, but I never really, like, prayed or, like, believed in him or anything. I just know he was a thing. And when I realized that everything that I went through could have been so much worse, and every single little thing, like, when you think back, you're like, yo, something's looking over you. At least me personally, something was looking over me, because I put myself and I put my family through a lot of stuff that regular person, I guess, or like a person shouldn't be able to get away with, because I was getting away with a lot of stuff. Luckily, I never got in trouble with the law. I never got in trouble or anything, just with my parents, with school. Multiple times I got kicked out of school, multiple times. But I don't know. God was there for me. Multiple times I was caught with stuff, and I was never, it was never brought to the police. It was never brought nothing. And they absolutely could have. It was like this in the same school. They caught me like 3-4 times, separate times. Yeah. But that happens to anybody else. I mean, not to say that I'm like whatever. Like I don't know how to word this. I'm just saying, like, there's something out there, right? Yeah. There's something out there.
Do you mind me asking, at the time, what did using mean to you? Was it for fun, fitting in, escaping? Was it a coping mechanism? Because I know that you mentioned that you're not really sure why you got into it, but once you did, was it simply just because? And also something that when I was working with interventionalists for the people that I love and kind of trying to understand the science behind why this could possibly be happening to someone, they kind of started to explain to me that it gets to a point that you start to need it to feel normal. Without it, you can't even feel like yourself anymore. So that's why you kind of dig the hole deeper. So I kind of want to...
It's a good topic, because at first, it literally started just for fun. Like, I wasn't running. Like I said, I had a perfect house. What could I possibly be running from, I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards it. Let's put it that way. I was running towards it because I like that. And like I said, I loved that the minute that I tried, the first sip of alcohol that I had, boom, this is my personality from now on. And then it was weed, and then it was, it progressed a little by little. It wasn't little by little, it was super fast, but, but like I said, at first it was fun, and then it got to a point where I couldn't be without it. I couldn't. And when I tell you it got to a point, it probably took like a month or 2 months from when I first started getting high, that I was like, yo, I don't ever want to be sober or clean or whatever. I don't ever want to feel, because I couldn't feel normal. Like, when they say that, that's not, like, it's not exaggerating. Like, I did not feel normal unless I was high. Yeah. And I feel like that's a trick your mind plays, to continue, because the mind likes getting high. I like getting high. My mind likes getting high even more. Yeah, exactly. The brain wants to keep feeling sedated. It wants to keep feeling that way. And that drove me deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper because the more I did,
Like your dopamine receptors.
oh, gone. Dopamine was not a thing no more. I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
Forget good. I didn't feel normal unless I was high or
Yeah.
drunk. And it got to a point where I felt like, oh, I can't socialize without getting high. Oh, let me get high. Oh, I can't go out without getting high. Let me get high. Oh, I can't eat. And it got to a point where I could not eat.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't function, and it kept getting worse. You know.
And I think, you know, the issue is then you're constantly chasing this sense of normalcy and then realizing that that substance isn't enough, right? Because I hear that all the time. Oh, it's just weed and it's just every once in a while, but then you need more and more and you start building tolerance. And the weed that is being given to kids and adults nowadays is not the same marijuana that our parents think of, you know, growing from the grass. And it's not. Like these drugs are they're synthetic, they're heavily mixed. Most of the time these kids think they're smoking cannabis and it's mixed and laced with all sorts of different things to hook them.
Well, I will also say, like, when it comes to addicts, they don't even care if they know that it's mixed and laced because you kind of, like I said, need it to feel normal so badly that you're willing to just get the slightest sensation. So that's also where it gets dangerous because they're aware that it might not be the best quality or that it might be laced, but they would rather feel high and get that dopamine hit. And they know that they're putting themselves in danger, but it genuinely does not matter. The only thing that registers is getting that dopamine hit.
I got a funny / sad story about that. That was another one of my wake up calls. It got to a point where this guy ran out of what I wanted. He ran out of mushrooms, ran out of weed, ran out of everything. He was like, "Listen, I got a pill. You want a pill?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I did not question once. I swear to God, I did not question once. What was in this pill? I didn't ask him, "Yo, what are you giving me?" Like that could have been a Tylenol, and I would have believed him. You know, I didn't care, and I took it and I prayed. That was one of the first times that I actually prayed and I said, "God, even if I die, like let me get high first." And that's the type of crazy stuff because I had no reason to be that way, you know, like physical real reason. I had no real reason except I can't feel like this. I can't feel no more. I can't feel sober. I can't. Something like inside of me could not.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because, you know, talking about stigmas, people think exactly like Jose said, like there had to have been a reason. Like what was the trigger? What were you running from? You know, it was your home environment. People don't realize that sometimes we're just predisposed genetically to become addicted. You know, there are people who try a substance once and are hooked for years. And then there's people who use it. And I think that that's the scary part, right? When kids, they try different drugs and they're like, oh, this was fine. I didn't get hooked on this one. And then they keep escalating. And one day they fall into a drug that does hook them. Or the scariest thing now, they take something that's laced with fentanyl and they overdose and they don't get that chance. And, you know, so I think it's really important to break that stigma that people who fall into addiction come from certain backgrounds or have certain issues. And, you know, we were talking with Jose and we'll meet someone else who's joining us today as well, who has a different story where yours was more, you know, the environment didn't lead you to that, but then the drugs led you into severe mental health issues, you know. And I think the other important thing that I want to talk about is for most adults, they finally succumb, right, to wanting recovery, right? They finally realize this is not worth it anymore, or they have reasons that motivate them. It's hard for kids. Like, let's be honest, you guys don't have a fully developed frontal lobe yet, and then now you're adding these drugs that blur your ability to think, to rationalize, right?
I also think you have the rest of your life to recover.
100%. And, you know, teens have this fearless, you know, nothing will get me mentality, right? Like, or that's never going to be me. I'm invincible. It's true. Or very egocentric. That's part of adolescence. And then now you add substance into that and mental health, right? So these kids need help. And, you know, as Jose shows, the way he got it was his parents, and his parents had to push him, right? So I would love for you to talk about what got you into recovery, because people think, I hear it all the time, oh, they have to want it. It's not always like that for kids. They need people to speak up and push.
Absolutely. and I want to emphasize something that you said, right? You do not need a reason, like you don't need a reason. Like while you're getting high, doesn't need a reason. You don't need to have a reason. You could stay clean. You could get clean. You could get better. It doesn't matter why you were getting high. Generally does not matter. At least to me, it didn't. And I know a lot of people that have 20 years clean, 40 years clean, 60 years clean that they don't even remember why they got high, you know? Of course. I've been for almost 2 years now, November 9th. Thank you, November 9th. November 9th, 2023 is my clean day. That's the day that I finally got it, you know? I don't like saying this time around because blah, 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 but... And I feel good, man. I feel good. My parents definitely helped a lot. My girlfriend definitely helped a lot. And I couldn't have done it without people, you know? I'm a strong believer that I'm one of those guys that believe that you gotta want it to get it. But when you're a kid at least, I don't know, when I was, my view of addicts or like people that had substance abuse disorders or whatever you want to call it, it has to be someone on the street, you know what I mean? Someone that's shooting up or someone that's like dying or someone that can't live a second without it or someone that, you know, like is living under a bridge, has no job, has sold his house. I never had a house, come on now, you know? And I want to like make it clear that that's not who an addict is. Bro, you're an addict if you try something you can't stop. Yeah. That's it, simple as that. Because a lot of people try to tell me, oh, you haven't lived long enough to be an addict, bro. No, what makes me an addict is that once I get the first sip, I cannot stop. Yeah. That's it. And back to what I was saying, my parents, especially my mom was hard-headed but a good way, right? I kept relapsing, I kept hurting her. I heard her a lot. I heard a lot of people. I heard everybody around me a lot. But my mom always stood by my side, you know. Each time a little bit went distant and more distant and more distant because you don't want to lose your son. You don't want your son to die, but you don't want to be around your son while he's dying either, you know. Yeah. And I was getting to a point that was my story. That was going to be my story. You know, if it wasn't for her, if it wasn't for my girlfriend, which I actually met my first time in treatment, I don't condone that, right? I don't condone, you know, dating treatment because, I'm a firm believer that the first few months, years of recovery, you got to focus on yourself.
There are people that I know who kind of have reached the point that they consider that it's the end of their life. Why get clean now? You know, I'm 60 years old. I'm reaching towards the end. I don't see a point, you know? My whole life I've been an addict. Why now? Why would I choose at 60 years old to get clean? And that's also something I want to touch base on, that it's never too late. I think that a lot of addicts get to the point that they've hurt their family members so much and hurt their friends and hurt so many people around them that they feel that shame, that they genuinely think that there's no turning back. You know, at least in my case, I can say that the people who I've experienced it with, I don't think anyone's ever too far gone. You know, I believe that forgiveness is just as important. Of course, there's always going to be boundaries, but I think if there is someone in your life who you know is dealing with something like this, it's important to let them know that if they choose to take that step, you will support them. You know, I don't think that it's ever too late to make that choice to turn your life around and to kind of show yourself, not for the other people around you, to show yourself that you can get past this and you can choose the other end.
Absolutely. That was so well said. I think it's never too late and it's never too early. Yeah. You know, because yes, and I wonder, when you think about it, Jose, if your parents didn't push you into treatment when they did, do you think your life would be different right now?
That's a good question, because I believe in fate, and I believe what happened to me was destined to happen to me. I don't know if it would have been that quick, if that's what we're talking about. I don't think it would have been that soon. I don't think I would have wanted it unless they pushed me to get it. So if we try to symbolize it, I don't. Yeah. I needed my parents. I needed my mom. I needed people. Yeah. I needed people around me to be like, yo, like, what are you doing? Like, wake up. You're young. What are you doing? You can't be throwing your life away. You know, you came from Cuba. You know English. Like, of course, there's people that believe English is the best thing in the world, which I believe so too. You know, but they're like, listen, you know English. You got amazing opportunities. Yeah. And it's true, and it's 100% true. I'll be throwing away, like, life. I'll be throwing away life, because there's a lot of kids in Cuba my age, younger than me, older than me, that unfortunately will never experience, you know, life in the States or life in freedom. They won't. And I have all this, and I'm willing to throw it away for one thing, which is getting high. No, man.
Yeah, and I think if God put you in this position, it's for a reason. Like how I say about my platform and about everyone, I believe that we all have certain gifts. We all have a certain path. And when we open our eyes and realize that something is right in front of us, it can change the trajectory of our lives. And that's also why I want to talk to Maya now, who's going to be joining us, because like you said, you didn't really have anything that you felt was wrong that you needed drugs to escape. So sometimes people use drugs to cope with mental health, but sometimes people develop mental health issues because of their substance abuse issues. So we got to hear a little bit of Jose's testimony, and now I want to introduce Maya. She's going to be joining us over the phone. I have her on call now, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her testimony, about kind of, you know, her perspective, because it's so intricate. A lot of the stories sound the same, but the intricacies of it are so different. And it's not really until you start hearing so many different perspectives that you might be able to connect the dots in your own life as well with the people that you're dealing with. So Maya, are you there? Let's
Hello?
get you on the line. Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for being here with us today virtually.
I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. So I would love to hear a little bit about your story, about kind of how, I know from what we spoke about pre-interview that you kind of got into substance abuse very early in your life, but it was due to your environment. And I kind of want to hear about how that's molded you into the woman you are today, about how you're in recovery as well, and kind of that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I did get into drugs at a very early age. I was, unfortunately, like, my household was abusive, both physically and mentally. And I suffered all kinds of abuse, from sexual abuse to physical to mental. And so it was definitely, like, hard to see that light when you're sitting in an environment that makes you feel that way. I just got very depressed. I was listening to Jose's story. It was very inspiring, but I'm definitely on the opposite end of that spectrum. I was I was struggling a lot from an early age. Around like 11, I started suffering with depression, and it got bad, and I didn't really have anyone there. You know, it's hard when you're having a hard time on your own, and you're having a hard time with other people, and then you come home and it's not a good environment. It's not a place you want to be. And so if you don't want to be home, you don't want to be outside, you're too depressed to go anywhere, I was looking for that extra step forward. And I know you guys mentioned how, like, it's even encouraged. I think you mentioned earlier how, like, some parents will encourage it. And, you know, I had a very similar experience when my mom found out that I was suicidal. She had offered me, like, a vape, and that immediately just, like, flipped a switch in me. And I think a lot is about, like, uneducation for adolescents. A lot of my friends, like, had no clue that nicotine even affected your brain at all. And it does, you know, everything affects you, and people just don't see an issue with it when it's all around you. And growing up, my father was addicted to opioids, so that was immediately something that was normalized. So after that, I started smoking weed, and then, like, immediately after, I think by 13, I was addicted to harder drugs, and it definitely impacted my mental health. And made it a lot worse. You know, while I thought I was feeling better in the moment, as time went on, like, it was just getting worse and worse. I isolated myself completely, and I just became, like, a mean person, which I still feel to this day, because I think the biggest thing to me is kindness and how I treat others. I think I relate to you on the empathy part. It hurts me to see people in pain, and I know that I caused that for so many people, both because I really didn't care. You know, when you're taking drugs that cut out your feelings, everything is just kind of like, okay. And then when you don't have anyone else around you to change that, it makes it a lot harder. You don't see a reason to want to get clean. Like, even if I did want to get clean while I was using, the fact that I had no one there to, like, give me that push, give me that step, it really it changed it all for me. Because if I didn't have a reason, no one else wanted me to, what was the need? And I got very, you know, alienated from my family, because I grew up in an Arab household where mental health is very, like, stigmatized. You know, if you're suffering with depression, if you're suffering with PTSD, it's the devil. It's nothing else. It couldn't have possibly been anything else. And you have to love your parents regardless of how they treat you. And that affected me insanely, because my siblings, you know, while we were all suffered from the addiction genes, they didn't fall for it. They were very, very smart growing up. And I was a smart child. You know, when I was in, like, 6th grade, I was taking high school classes, but by the time I was in high school, I was using, and I was failing my high school classes. Wow. And so things just changed throughout then. And then around 15, I overdosed, And at that point, I think I realized that my problem was a problem, and I wasn't just messing around. I wasn't just having fun. And Jose mentioned like how his friends were telling him like, no, like you need to go home. Like this is too much. We don't want to hang out with you. In like 8th grade, I was like bringing water bottles filled with vodka to school, and my friends were like, wait, that's not normal. And I would just laugh it off, and I'm like, like it's fun, whatever. And it's so normalized, like it's insanely normalized. My sisters knew.
I will say something. First of all, thank you for sharing that, because I mean, as heavy as it is really important to realize that kids are going through this. I think that it's a hard reality, but it's the truth. But something that really stuck out to me that Jose said as well, that he met his girlfriend in treatment. And even though he doesn't condone it, I think that we don't realize how important the people we surround ourselves with are, especially recovering addicts. A lot of the times it is hard for them to even take that step towards recovery because the circle that they're surrounding themselves with don't encourage it. They don't want to see someone that they're having quote unquote fun with recover, because then that means that you basically have nothing in common anymore. What you have in common is what you're doing when you are abusing substances and when you're getting drunk together and when you're doing these things, which maybe for a regular person is fine, but for an addict, it's a really scary step to take, to know that maybe if you take that step towards recovery, you'll lose everything because your life has kind of become centered around the people who you're doing this with.
I do want to add in on that point, because that was something I struggled with insanely when I was using. Using, unfortunately, at a young age makes you quote unquote cool, and so I had a much larger friend group. I had a lot more friends, and I mean, I don't think they were my friends. I think they were hanging out with me because we all had a shared interest. And when I got clean, I went from all these friends to suddenly 2 people. Even it got to a point where my closest friends, they couldn't respect the fact that I was getting clean. They were using, and it's hard cutting these people off in order to put yourself first. But I do want to say, as time went on, now I have people that I used to be friends with. They're coming to me, and they're asking me how I did it. They're asking me for help, and it's just genuinely it makes me emotional, because it's just the biggest thing to me, to know that me going through that and me struggling and me feeling alone can lead to someone knowing they're not alone. I think knowing you're not alone would have changed so much. And my partner helped me a lot in my recovery. I think having someone there to know that you have someone that cares about that is what makes literally all 100%. The difference. When after I had overdosed, my mom didn't want me home. My father didn't want me at all. Neither family member wanted me home. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do with myself. There was just literally no reason. But when you have someone around you that's hey, I see you. You're not alone. I understand you're struggling. It just completely 180s the situation.
Yeah. And can I ask you both? Because now that I'm sitting here thinking, and of course, as I hear your testimonies, it starts to change your perspective on what I've gone through personally, seeing people that I love go through this. What keeps you guys going? Because I'm sure just with addiction and recovery, not only that, I think with anything in life, people who have never dealt with addiction, maybe even something as simple as a diet when you're trying to get in shape, that you have days that you genuinely just don't want to keep going. So as a recovering addict, on the days that you genuinely just have that itch and that you don't want to do it anymore, what gives you that beacon of hope, that gives you that faith and that gut intuition of not falling back into the patterns,
I try to keep it simple, because I definitely, of course, I'm gonna get days like that. I get days that I really, really, really want to get high, and I get days that I don't even think about it. I try to keep it simple. On those days, the hard days, I just pray, right? I pray to whatever God I believe in. Doesn't matter. I just pray. I just talk to something. I call my sponsor. I have a sponsor. I call the people around me, and I just realize that it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, because listen, you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have horrible days, whether it's a diet, whether it's addiction, whatever it is. Just know that it's a mental thing. If you don't feed into those thoughts, because thoughts for me go nowhere unless you want them to. When I get out of here, I'm probably gonna, oh my God, I can't wait to get high. I'm I don't get high no more. What's happening here? And that's gonna happen. And I just try to keep it simple. I realize that my mind doesn't control me unless I let it. And it's gonna be fine, because everything's gonna be fine. Whether you get high today, whether you don't, you're gonna be fine if you want it to be fine, and that's it. That's really, really, really the way that I handle that.
And what about you, Mai?
I think it was definitely different for me at first. Wait, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Okay, wait, cut that out. Okay, for me, it was definitely different. At first, like in the beginning, I think the hardest part is getting through that main like push. It's from deciding that you do want to get clean, and once you see that. I think there was times where I would be like, what's the point? Like, I don't enjoy being sober. Like, I don't enjoy being clean. And then I remember reaching a point which was like a humongous breakthrough for me, where I was like, you know, when I crave, I'm like, yeah, like I want to get high like this. But then I thought about how like I was high throughout my life. I have chunks of my life literally missing because I can't remember because I was so high. And I was like, I just don't know if I want that anymore. And if I had told myself that when I was younger and I sat here and was speaking to my younger self, she would have laughed. She would have been like, you know you're lying. But like I've seriously reached a point where I'm like, I want to remember these moments, you know. I've found a place where getting clean, I would not be here if I was not clean. And it has reached me to a point where I truly do want to remember what's going on, despite like what I went through, despite the trauma I've endured. There are these days that I like live for. I know I want to see this, I know I want to experience this, and I know I wouldn't have experienced it if I was using. And ironically, this is the most cliche thing anyone has ever told me. And I think it's funny, but when things are extremely hard, and I think right now in here, I want to pop a pill or I want to smoke, I say just for today. I tell myself, tomorrow, maybe I can do it. But tomorrow comes, and 99% of the time, the feeling is gone. The feeling is no longer there. So really telling yourself one day at a time and just for today is not just like a cliche, like I mean, a slogan. Like it genuinely does help me.
And I think that's so important. I always get that question in treatment, like, you know, what is therapy? How does it work? How do you change? Like, what's the magic? What's the secret? What's even the pill? What medication can I take? And I tell people the same way you didn't just wake up one day having all those feelings, suffering from that depression, that anxiety, that didn't happen overnight, right? Recovery doesn't happen overnight. Recovery is a choice that you have to make every single day when you wake up. Right? And telling that to a kid, a 12 or 13-year-old, can be really scary, but it's the reality. I look at them and I say, this is something you will have to work on for the rest of your life. You have to make this choice every day. And that's hard, but you have to take each day, one day at a time. Especially when you're 14 or 15. It's different when you're trying to get clean 50, 60 years old. Yes, you still have a lot of life left, but imagine being 12 or 13 years old and being told that, right? And Maya said something that was so important, and that's what makes our program what it is the connection, right? Like, you had to be around people who got it, who understood you, and that's the power of treatment, right? And community. It's being in a room full of other 13 to 17-year-olds who understand, like, I've been there. I'm going through that, because it can be really isolating, right? Like, it feels like you're the only one going through it, especially in Hispanic households we were talking about, where there's a lot of shame. And even for families, like, parents sometimes hesitate to get their kids help because they think it's something they did wrong or something wrong with them. Yes. And then they come to our program and we have a parent support group. And when they look around the room, right, our parent support groups, it's powerful when they see other parents just like them and they're like, wow, it wasn't something I did. This is just something that happened, but there's resources out there, there's help, and we can get them for these kids, right? And I just want to say for Maya, I can imagine that's hard because it sounds like you didn't have somebody in your corner pushing you into treatment. You had to do that, and I can only imagine how hard that was.
You still did it, which is something you should be so proud of yourself for every single day, because that's, I mean, more often than not, you hear the people who actually got to that point in recovery, it's because they had someone on their corner. So the fact that you were able to do that is just amazing.
I want to thank you both, and I do want to speak about what she was talking about. You know, I also attended a treatment center that had something like that, and it's hard. It's hard seeing all those parents there, knowing your parents aren't showing up, and like sitting and waiting and hoping that they could take that step to get better, and they don't. And I think to this day, I hope there's days where my parents could get better. You know, But I think you just have to reach a point where you realize that you are now your main priority. You know, growing up like that, you need to realize that. And even though my parents weren't there, like the people around me were there. There was people that were still there that genuinely cared about me, and it's so hard to see when you're struggling like that, because when you grow up in a place where no one believes in you, you easily don't believe in yourself. There's nothing there that makes you think I can do this.
Yeah.
But it does come. It truly does.
Well, thank you so much. I'm literally like so impressed, and I've learned so much from the both of you. And as we close out, I want to know what's one message that both of you want every listener to take away from everything that you just gave us, you know, because I think that I mean, I know that I'm going to remember this for the rest of my life. This is such a special day for me. And like, as important as it is, I believe that, you know, like I'm inspired by the both of you. So yeah, what's one message that you want every listener to take away from this?
Right, like all of us here make this sound very easy, right? Because we already went through it. It's not the same as when you're going through it. When you're going through it, it feels completely different. You're like, I don't want to listen to this guy on camera or whatever. Like,
Yeah, like who are you?
yeah, like you haven't gone through what I've been through, and that's fine. You could think that way because it's true. I haven't gone through what you've been through, and you haven't gone through what I've been through. But the point is that don't think, how do I put this? It's not easy, right? Don't think that it's gonna be easy, because it's not gonna be easy. It's generally not. Like she was talking about, you have to realize that this is a day at a time thing. Because me, if I start thinking like, honestly, I don't know if tomorrow I'm gonna be clean. I want to, but I don't know if I'm going to, let alone years, 10 years. I don't even want to think about that, because the fact is that it's a day at a time thing, right? You can't get clean on tomorrow's recovery, and you can't stay clean on yesterday's recovery. It's just not the way that I look at it, right? It's just not how it works for me in my life. So don't think that it's so, don't think that we're full of, bad stuff. How do I put this? I know I make it sound easy because, yeah, it all sounds good, blah, 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 blah. But when you're actually going through it, does not feel like how I'm saying it. At least that's the way, when I was in there, I'm like, yo, my parents were like, oh, you simply don't do it. And I'm like, it's not easy, Mom. I can't just not do it. What do you mean? And once you get to a point, right, let's real quick on relapse, right? Because I got clean a couple of times before. Don't think that you could just say, oh, I'm just not going to do it today. You can, but once you get to a point of like, oh, I'm going to get high, I'm sorry to tell you, nothing's going to stop you. You could lock yourself in your room, you're going to get high. So you have to keep yourself away from that. The minute you get the first thought, that's okay. Nothing bad's going to happen when you get the first thought. Just talk to someone. 3, 4, 5, 6 thoughts, that's fine. But once you make the decision, I'm going to get high, there's nothing. Might as well go into treatment or something, because you're gonna get high. At least me. Once I made the decision, nothing. I know it was gonna hurt my mom. I knew it was gonna probably die. Like I said, that day that I took that pill, I knew I was probably gonna die. It didn't matter to me. It didn't. Nothing matters to me except getting high. When that switch flips, so try to stay away. That's my message. Try to stay away from that thought. You could get thoughts 24/7. It's okay, but if you make the decision,
Know your triggers.
yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's your program. It's not my program. My recovery could get people high, and other people's recovery could get me high. We all know what we could do. Just your limits. At least I know my limits.
Yeah.
How about you, Maya? What's your message?
I think the biggest thing that I want to be known is that no matter how alone you may feel, no matter how genuinely you may feel nobody around you cares, there will always be a place to ask for help. Even if at the end of the day you feel like you have no one, you have no resources to have no one, know that you have yourself. No matter what, you will always be able to hold yourself. There is never a point in your life where there is no way to go back. Every single day that you think you're too far gone, you're not. 2.5 years ago, I was shaking, having withdrawals on my bathroom floor, and today this is where I am. I've came a tremendously long way, and I think no matter where you look, if you look hard enough, there will be someone out there that will help you. People care about you a lot more than you think they do. You're literally never alone.
Wow, we're so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is hard work, and thank you for coming out and speaking to people, and I really believe that there is going to be at least one person who hears this message and connects.
And if not, I'll stay clean, so everything's good.
Exactly, exactly.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening in. I am so grateful. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for, giving us your time. And I'm going to link resources. I'm going to, always try to continue educating, try to continue to spread awareness, because awareness is the first step to a better tomorrow in all aspects, not just addiction, recovery, and any social project and any change that we're trying to make. Staying silent does more harm than good. So thank you guys so much for being here with us today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.